Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about equipment and loadouts, and we might just take a look at some of the specific pieces of gear and some of the new artifacts that they've released. Equipment comes in 6 slots: head, body, arms, feet, and then you get 2 accessories. It'll also come in 4 rarities, which you should be familiar with because it's the same ones used by Magic the Gathering, the card game, and it gets used in other places in Magic Legends as well. That is, we'll have gear that is common, uncommon, rare, and mythic. Every piece of gear you pick up has one core mod and at least one adaptive mod. Core mods are like the main ability for the piece of gear, and then adaptive mods are the little small bonuses below them that you can swap out. Whenever you get a duplicate piece of gear, you'll either get a new adaptive mod for it that you can swap out. Say your gear piece originally gave you blue mana resistance, but then you picked one up that gave you a boost to health glow potency. You would now have that new option to unlock. Or, if you already had that unlocked, you'll instead get upgrade material for that specific piece of gear. So for example, if I have a Nemesis mask and I get a second one, I'll either unlock a new adaptive mod ability to it, or I'll get upgrade material to upgrade specifically a Nemesis mask. This keeps you from having to sell off a bunch of pieces to vendors because it's all just upgrading what you already have. Now again, those core mods are going to contain your triggered abilities. That's what you're going to be using whenever you're trying to, synergize your build. It's like, okay, this particular ability works really well with, say, this class ability, or this artifact, or these spells. And then your adaptive mods contain those small little bonuses for when you're min-maxing. Whenever you get a piece of gear, you get both the physical piece of gear, that is the item with all of its stats and bonuses and all that, as well as the cosmetic version of it. So you can equip one item, say Bracers A, for the actual effect, but then go over and equip Bracers B for the actual physical appearance. And you can talk to a tailor to change, your appearance, be it your gear, what color it is, face, body, eyes, hair, all that. As far as color customization goes, rather than having that big color chart or whatever where you click around until you find the exact color you want, it looks like we're getting predetermined specific colors to work with. There's one thing they didn't discuss, but was kind of relevant in the video itself. If you look at some of the gear pieces, it's like, okay, this piece of gear has 5 adaptive mods. You have 2 that you can equip, and then sort of 3 that you can go through. And this other piece has 4 adaptive mods. 2 you can equip, and then 4 total that you can choose from. Like, okay, you're thinking, well, that's normal. A higher rarity piece of gear has more options, and that's true. That's important. But I think the thing that they didn't really touch on is that you'll notice there's only 4 or 5 options there. You have 2 that it comes with, and then 2 more that they can unlock, and you can actually see them sort of unlock and swap them out throughout the video. But those aren't all the possible options in the game. Those are just all the possible options for that piece. That suggests to me that each piece of gear will have set bonuses that you can have on it. If you are trying to stack, say, red mana resistance because you want to go into a dungeon, chances are you're not going to be able to put red mana resistance on every single piece of gear you have. Likewise, if you're trying to increase sorcery potency, you're not going to be able to put that on every single piece of gear you have. It looks like each piece of gear has a set, category of what bonuses you can have on those adaptive mods. That means chances are you're either going to A, build your entire loadout based on the triggered abilities and then take what adaptive mods you have the options for. Or B, if you really wanted to, you could pick pieces of gear that give you those little tiny bonuses, your adaptive mod bonuses, and stack those rather than trying to get specific triggered abilities. But I'm not sure that's necessarily going to be the way to go, but that's always an option. The important thing is I don't think you're going to have the option of putting every single adaptive mod option on every single piece of gear. That said, that leads us into loadouts. They discussed a little bit on loadouts. It's about what we thought it was. You can have a loadout that covers your class, your deck, your equipment, your artifact, and your class traits. So you can switch from one loadout to a completely different loadout and have it be a different class, have a different deck, have different equipment and artifacts equipped, and all of that. That's about what we expected, but it's nice to have that confirmed. Finally, we may as well go over some of the gear and artifacts that got previewed in the process, because I think we're starting to get enough that we can start theory crafting a little bit, or at the very least, just get an idea of what's in game and figure out what types of things we might look for or might want to play. And if nothing else, it's just fun to see what all they've got. Starting with some of the armor sets where we got to see multiple pieces from them as examples, we have Pack Leader's Garb, which is the chest piece for this particular set. And it says whenever you activate your secondary ability, you have a 10% chance to gain lesser mana regeneration for 1 second per creature you control with a buff you own. It's a very green style ability, I think, because it's giving you mana generation, which is how they're handling sort of the video game version of the card game's mana ramp. And it's based on creatures you control that have buffs, which again is a very green thing to do. Compare that to the Pack Leader's wrist wraps that give just a straight bonus to utility ability potency. Now both of those, the chance to gain lesser mana regeneration on the garb and the utility ability potency on the wrist wraps, have that little dotted line under them, which means whenever you upgrade them, that's what's going to increase. Next up, we have a couple pieces from the Harvester set. The bracers of the Harvester say that whenever you draw a spell, you have a 6% chance, with the 6% chance being what increases as you level it up, for nearby foes to lose 240 health, and you heal for that much. Then the Helm of the Harvester states that whenever you drop below 2 mana, you have a 15% chance, and that's what you can level up, to gain 250 Soul Steel potency for 10 seconds. I had to stop and think about this one, but this seems like they're trying to do sort of a black theme to it, I think. Because we have Soul Steel, which is what they're calling their version of Lifelink in here. And then on the bracers, we have a chance for just a straight up enemies lose health and you heal for that much. So you have very much sort of a draining health type of feel to these. We also have a couple pieces from the Occult set. The Headdress of the Occult states that whenever you kill a foe with your primary attack, you have an 8% chance, which you can level up, to create a 1/1 white and black human cleric token for 10 seconds. And then the wrappings of the Occult state that whenever you activate Mana Surge, which is whenever you max out your Spark meter, you can either use sort of your class's ultimate ability or Mana Surge, where you just get a bunch of mana faster. You have, whenever you activate your Mana Surge, you have a 20% chance, which you can increase, to sacrifice your lowest toughness creature and deal 500% of its power in damage to foes near it. That, again, seems like a very black-oriented set, possibly black-white, because it does state black and white cleric. You're basically using this gear set to create tokens and then sacrifice them for damage, which seems well in line with the playstyle for character using black spells, or maybe the Necromancer specifically. We'll actually see a piece of gear a little later that creates a 6/1 creature token that would actually be really fun to pair up with this. Why? Because it creates a really weak creature that would probably have your lowest toughness, but it has a really big power, just base power, so that when you do sacrifice it, it's going to do a huge amount of damage. Next, we have Wrist Wraps of Blight. Whenever you activate Mana Surge, you have a 51% chance, which you can level up, to create a 2/2 green ooze creature token with Retaliate for 20 seconds. That seems like a good one for a green deck because you've got that Mana Surge, Mana Regeneration portion that you're playing off of. I can also see it being fun in, say, a green-black deck because you're also got a cheap little creature you can sacrifice. Next, we have the Attire of Calamity. Whenever you activate your utility ability, you have a 36% chance, which you can level up, to create a 6/1 elemental creature token with Greater Swiftness for 15 seconds. Greater Swiftness, I believe, is their version of Haste from the card game. So you're going to be able to create a creature that you just pop out and just have it start swinging. That seems like a very aggressive play. More aggressive decks will appreciate that. I know it seems right off the bat like a red ability, which you can use it that way, because that would be fun. You just pop right in, use your utility to jump smack dab in the middle of things, and all of a sudden there's this big elemental creature smacking away at everybody. But I think you can probably find uses for it elsewhere too. The Nemesis Mask is the mythic item piece that they previewed. It says whenever you are at full health, you have, whenever you deal damage, 25% chance to taunt nearby foes for 5 seconds. It's a little awkwardly worded, but basically when you're at full health, whenever you do damage, you have a chance to taunt everyone nearby. So this is going to be for your really tanky builds, I think, where you want everything just sort of focused on you. And it also gives you an incentive to keep your health topped off. We have the Tactician's Headdress. Whenever you activate Mana Surge, you have a 41% chance, which you can increase, for creatures you control to teleport to you and gain greater haste for 5 seconds. That seems to have to be good, not just in creature-heavy decks, but particularly in decks where you're using those creatures as sort of your physical blockers. I know at least one of the playstyles we've seen involves them using the creatures out as sort of the barrier while they hang back and sling spells. This is a great way to make sure you can keep your creatures near you as sort of blocking everything in your way, and it gives them a little extra boost while you're getting that extra mana to start slinging out all the really big hitters. We have the Thaumaturge's Bracers, which say whenever you pick up a health globe, which is your health drops that you can pick up in fights, you have a 51% chance, which you can increase, to disorient nearby foes for 10 seconds. So you have a nice little control ability there. I think Thaumaturge is usually used for blue spells, name-wise, in the card game. I think that would fall well in line with sort of the blue style of play whenever you need to gain health, which is something you'll probably have to do for your more control-y builds. You have the chance to do a small control effect on anyone nearby, which is good because those nearby enemies are probably why you needed that health to begin with. We have the Trailblazer's Attire. Whenever you have a full spell hand, you have plus 53, and you can increase that, primary attack potency for each creature you control. This seems really good for either red or green decks or decks that have sort of that similar style of play where you do want to cast some creatures and then get up right smack dab in the middle of things yourself. Or at the very least, where you want to cast your creatures, maybe hold on to a couple cards until you really need them or until you need to recast your creatures and just focus on doing the attacks yourself. The last piece of gear that we saw the actual effect for was the Greaves of the Warden. Whenever you're at full mana, you have plus 105, you can increase that, green mana sorcery potency. So that's where if you really want to focus on the sorceries more than the creatures in a green deck build, that would be a great one to have. They also showed us 2 of the accessories. We have the Obsidian Talisman. Whenever you pick up a Spark Globe, you gain Taunt for 0 seconds. Okay, that might not seem particularly useful at first level, but as you level it up, you can raise that so that you can gain a Taunt whenever you pick up a Spark Globe. But until you level it up, you still get the bonuses from the little adaptive mods. So you can still get some benefit, even if the accessory itself isn't quite as powerful as some of the other gear we've seen. And then we have the Talisman of Symbiosis. Whenever you drop below 30% max health, your strongest creature loses 25% of their current hit points, and you heal for 4%, and you can increase that, of the life lost. Hopefully, your creatures have more health than you do, because then that becomes really impressive. But if nothing else, it's a nice little way to sort of draw power from your creatures if you're playing a more creature-oriented deck. All the gear has a lot of the same or similar adaptive mod abilities. Among all of them, we see colored mana resistance, primary attack potency, secondary attack potency, utility ability potency, utility recharge rate. So normal stuff, resist something, make your attack stronger, let you use your utility more often. We have some health related stuff. One increases incoming healing. We have stuff that will give you health regeneration, increase your max health, give you more health off of health glow pickups, things like that. You also have one for soul steal potency. So you have a lot of options that seem to be either bonuses to offense or bonuses to healing and survivability. A couple of the pieces had some more interesting options. The Wrappings of the Occult gave us a chance to gain black mana creature potency whenever we use our utility ability. So that's a great one for your black necromancers. You had a chance to heal off the Tactician's Headdress whenever you use your secondary ability. So that makes me think that's a good one for sort of white-oriented decks or decks that'll have a similar playstyle where you are trying to heal your creatures, because then I can see how that synergizes with the regular ability. Okay, all your creatures just got teleported to you, and now you have the option to sort of heal them all. The Nemesis Mask gave you a chance to gain Reflect whenever you use Mana Surge, which I assume is just reflecting damage back. And one that'll be really fun and can go horribly wrong, but definitely shows that red chaotic influence behind it, is the Attire of Calamity. Whenever you activate your secondary ability, you have a chance for your weakest creature to get +3, -2 for 10 seconds. So to be clear, it's going to get a boost in attack, but it would lose life. Remember that the gear itself gives you a 6/1 elemental. So I would put it at a 9, -1. So it would have an attack power of 9 and a toughness rating, which is how they're doing their health, of -1. I don't know if that kills it outright, or if there's a different way that it handles the pluses and minuses compared to the card game, but that would be interesting. Like, what happens if your Attire of Calamity triggers while you don't have any other creatures out? That would be a fun one to see, just to see what happens. We also have some fun artifacts. Cursed Idol says that whenever you cast a sorcery, nearby foes gain greater vulnerability for 5 seconds, and you gain lesser vulnerability for 12 seconds. Okay, so as long as you keep casting spells, then that sort of balances out. They all have greater, you have lesser, but if you don't have enough sorceries to make it work, then your vulnerability is going to last longer. However, when you get up to level 20, you get a nice little bonus. The lesser vulnerability duration is decreased by 1 second for each creature spell in your deck. So you have to make a choice. Do I want to trigger the ability really often by having a lot of sorceries, or do I want to add in creatures so that my own weakness doesn't last as long? And you can definitely see, just in the effect itself, the black mana influence. And we actually see that at level 10 you get a black mana sorcery potency boost. We have the Grave Robber's Bauble, which says whenever your health drops by 24.4%, which is such an odd number, from a single source of damage, summon a 3/3 Black Skeleton Archer token for 10 seconds. And whenever you level it up, you get a bonus to black mana creature health, which I assume will apply to the Skeleton Archer. And then at level 20, a +1 second of the token's duration for each creature spell in your deck. Again, seems like a very black-oriented card. I'm fine with that. If there's one or two colors that are really good at gaining health back. Black is probably going to be one of them because it has a lot of abilities where it steals health. So if you do lose a lot of health from an attack, and you can actually set it up to where maybe your defense isn't that great, so you do take that damage, you can at least steal it back and you'll have a creature in the process. I think someone was showing off their Necromancer build because next we have the Tome of Gisa, which also seems like a very black Necromancer type of feel. It also doesn't hurt that Gisa is someone that creates zombies in the card game. But her tome says that whenever you cast a zombie creature spell, summon an additional 2/2 black zombie creature token for 10.5 seconds. It gains greater swiftness for 2.5 seconds. So you're getting extra zombies whenever you cast zombies. You'll get a bonus to black mana creature health. And then when it's leveled up all the way, your greater swiftness duration is increased by 1 second for each creature spell in your deck. This person was really playing up a black creature deck by the looks of it. And what better way to top off a black creature deck than with the Whip of Erebos? If you're not familiar with him, Erebos is one of the gods of Theros, which is their Greek-inspired plane. Erebos is a black god, and the Whip of Erebos gave creatures lifelink, and I think will let you resurrect a creature. But in the game, it says when a creature you control dies for the first time, it resurrects with 28% of its hit points and gains lifelink. Okay, that seems pretty thematic for the actual card. Not exactly the same, but it does give you that resurrection and it gives the creature lifelink. It's probably good for balance too, because you don't want to have to somehow find a way to activate your artifact every time. You probably don't want all your creatures to automatically have lifelink. So again, it works both thematically and I think it's a good balance. That creature gains lesser haste for 5.25 seconds and loses 5% of their max hit points every second. The creature's going to come back, or there's a chance it will anyway. And if it does, it'll gain lifelink, lesser haste, and it will lose some of its hit points every second, but with any luck, it's doing damage and gaining that back. As you level up, you'll get a bonus to Soulsteel Potency, and then at level 20, plus 1 second of lesser haste for each sorcery spell in your deck. So they have an interesting set of artifacts here, because if they had all those zombie artifacts equipped, they have to find a good balance between how many sorceries they want in their deck, how many creatures they want in their deck to get everything to trigger. And I think that'll be one of the fun things to do, is trying to find that right balance. We also have one of our lesser artifacts, the Vial of Renewal. It gives plus 12 sorcery healing potency, and when you level up to level 10, it gives you a bonus to white mana sorcery potency. Finally, we have the Draconic Flux. Whenever you cast a sorcery spell, gain lesser resistance for 5.5 seconds. And then there is a 4% chance to create a 6/6 red dragon creature token for 15 seconds. Chance is increased by 8% per mana spent on the sorcery. So if you want to play big spells, there's a better chance to create one of these big dragons. Say you play a 6 mana spell, that bumps you up to a 52% chance to create a dragon. I can see a lot of people wanting to do bigger spells just to have a better chance of triggering these dragons. When you level up, you'll get a red mana creature health bonus. And then finally, plus 2 seconds of dragon token duration for each creature spell in your deck. So again, you have to make that balance. Do I want chance to make dragons a bunch of times, or do I want them to stick around once I make them? While we're talking about artifacts, as a fun little aside, they've also updated the Planeswalker bundle. We now know what the Gilded Lotus and the Experimental Sentinel actually do. The Gilded Lotus states that whenever you defeat a champion rate creature or higher, there is a chance to drop lotus petals on the battlefield. Picking up a lotus petal grants 1 mana and a lesser might buff for a short amount of time. For every sorcery in your deck, the lesser might lasts an additional second. I know in the card game, the Gilded Lotus is just a straight plus 3 mana. I think they ramped it back a little bit and gave you a buff on top of it just to balance things out. I don't really know what champion rank difficulty is going to be in here. I am thinking of something more along the lines of MMOs that I've played, where it's like, okay, you have your normal mob, you have your strong mob, which is probably about 2 regular mobs. Your elite mobs, which is a little bit tougher, and then your champion mobs, which is probably the high end of what you normally solo, unless you have like a huge, level advantage or something. And then you have Experimental Sentinel that states when another artifact creature enters the battlefield under your control, the Experimental Sentinel heals you based on the power and toughness of that summoned creature. So it really benefits you to have a bunch of artifact creatures, which, if you're not aware, are generally like your golems or your mechanical or whatever creatures. They're the ones in Magic the Gathering that don't have a cost associated with any of the 5 colored mana types. They're just, okay, they exist, you can pay any type of mana for them. But this is artifact creatures, so it's not something that you equip to your artifact slot. It's just a sort of type of creature. Not exactly. I mean, we have creature subtypes like angel and demon and all that. It's not a subtype, but we don't want to get too complicated, but it's basically a creature that's going to go in your deck, and you can spend any type of mana usually to cast it. I say usually because there are colored artifact creatures, but they're much rarer. I think that's it for today. Again, these are not the only ways to play any of this, but it's fun to just sort of see what immediately jumps out at you and what you might be able to think of afterwards. It'll be fun to see how all of these little pieces get put together into the actual builds once people really start working on them. But for now, it's just nice to kind of get an idea of what's going on out there and what we might want to build when we get the chance. As always, if you'd like to leave a comment, like, or subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. If not, that's okay too. I understand. Either way, I hope you have an awesome day, and I will catch you next time.